Hi, and good morning, and welcome to Boom It's on the Blockchain. Today, I'm joined by Daniel Addison. How are you, Daniel?
Doing great. Welcome. Thank you for having me, Alistair.
Perfect. So in this show, we're going to speak a bit more about EV charging
hmm
and some of the challenges EV charging's got coming ahead. So, this article here in Upstream, which is a publication I quite like going into, speaks about different types of energy sources, etc.
Yep.
And it's speaking about cybersecurity and EV charging. EV charging stations' cyber vulnerabilities could be EV's Achilles heel.
hmm
So, and I'll just read the first paragraph of the article to let people understand. Electric vehicles are the critical pillar of global automotive revolution we're experiencing today. Over the next 5 years, the US government's going to invest $5 billion in charging infrastructure, paving the way for long distance travel. But and then it starts to talk about some of the problems that you're going to be facing with these EV charging stations. So give a little bit of your insight into this then, please, Daniel.
Yeah, absolutely, Alistair. Well, obviously, as that article specifically state, as more and more of these EV charging stations are being developed, the infrastructure, they're being put on the network, right? So there's some concerns from a cybersecurity perspective over the range, the reliability, and the security of the charging points of these EV charging stations. And so, again, anytime we're putting something on the network, et cetera, data collection, you got to be a little concerned about the threat actors, so to speak. They're advanced, right? And so these upcoming vulnerabilities is just as important as it relates to the development of these charging stations, right? So we have to continue to have this in mind as these infrastructures are being developed. So although the U.S. government is investing a lot of this money into the development of it, we also had to keep in mind the cybersecurity perspective, right? These vulnerabilities or future vulnerabilities that would be arising once we develop more of these charging stations.
Yeah, in the article itself, they actually said that, our analysis, we found
Yep.
100 plus publicly reported
Mm-hmm.
automotive cyber related incidents since beginning of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And EV charging has been identified as the number one emerging attacking vector.
Yep.
So the article talks about charging stations growing numbers and the security vulnerabilities could be EV's Achilles heel.
Mm-hmm.
Because what's going to mitigate future attacks, it's becoming key for doing this, and we've only got, a small amount of charging stations. But, and going forward, as we create more of these, they're going to start to get attacked all the time because people
Exactly.
need to realize these EV charging stations, essentially, they're computers. They're
Exactly.
online computer systems that are connected to the grid.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a Tesla is essentially a computer inside a car.
Mm-hmm.
These EV charging stations, in order for them to charge your Tesla, they're a computer as well. And because it's a computer, they can potentially get hacked. So when they're getting hacked, what are the problems they're likely to face then, Daniel?
Yeah, multitude of things. And that same article that you're reading from, Alistair, I actually identified three problems that they can face. For example, the grid to the vehicle, right? The attacks against charging the network, it could disrupt the ability to charge the EVs, right, at scale. That's number one. They can also face these charging stations. They can face multiple attacks. Fraud, charging fraud could happen, or via vehicle impersonation. So again, these are some of the things that could, and this is just a three, vulnerabilities that primarily that could be an impact to when you're developing these EV charging stations. So it's critical, right? As we collect in this data, like you said, essentially just computers. So at the same time, we're collecting this data is important again to at the same time have some type of mechanism, data security monitoring type mechanism to prevent these type of attacks. So
Yeah, and I just brought the article back up again. So then it's like, here's the three you're talking about there. So, the first one, it says grid to fleet charging stations attacking multiple vehicles all at the same time. Grid to vehicles, attacks against charging networks could disrupt the ability to charge the electric vehicles and the ability for you to actually charge the electric vehicles at scale. So if you're thinking of disruption from, say, foreign governments that aren't friendly to the US, like some of the hackers we're talking about in North Korea in a previous podcast, ultimately, if they went in there and they disrupt the network, that no one could charge their electric vehicles in San Diego today, then suddenly you would get absolute chaos, because then everyone who's got a Tesla who were trying to use one of these charging stations could no longer charge their vehicles. And then the other one is the charging fraud via vehicle impersonation. So ultimately, two things that they can say they can do is, one, they can overcharge you when you're actually charging, or ultimately, if they hack in to essentially, not only the charging station, but get access details to your car, then they can actually say you've been charging your car in multiple different stations where you haven't been charging your car, billing you, and then essentially keeping the money. In the same way they're working fraud and, crypto crime and stuff like that as well. So it's amazing to think that these are starting to happen. And then, let's have a look at some of the headlines they're talking about. January 2022, 7 vulnerabilities were found in multiple charging stations, which allowed remote attackers to impersonate charging station admin users and carry out actions on their behalf. So explain what they would be able to do there then, Daniel.
Yeah, as you stated, ransomware attack. So that's, can happen where the administrator, the user, wouldn't be able to understand or know or see what's going on, right, with these impersonations relating to the charging stations. And so this is very critical,
how
right?
Ransomware works anyway. Just before we go in the chart, just explain how ransomware works, because people see ransomware. How does that affect my computer? But just explain to them, how it works and how important it is not to have ransomware in your computer, let alone an EV charging station.
Exactly. So yeah, absolutely. In a ransomware, obviously, is just a malicious code, right? Itself, and where the system administrator comes in, and to give you an example, administrator comes in, wouldn't be able to access the system or access the files and folders. It would be encrypted, and this type of encryption would be unknown to that admin user or system admin user, and therefore once that admin user has to report this, then obviously the ransomware part comes into the picture, and where the threat actor would hold that ransom to say, hey, you have to pay me up, and I won't let you get your access to the system until obviously you pay some form of a ransom, particularly in crypto. Obviously, it's what they do. And some of these companies, they either have to pay up and so that they can, to get the access. But that's basically what ransomware is. It's just malicious code writing to encrypt the files of a particular system, or the files of the folders. The system administrator cannot get to it. It's encrypted. They don't know this encryption, and pretty much it's sort of like a lock out of the system, and becomes a ransom when you requesting a certain amount of money, right? Whether it be in crypto or, and they prefer crypto, obviously, because of the anonymous. It's not being able to trace them or track them in a sense.
Yeah, and they think of ransomware going into an EV charging station as that if they're able to mask, it's not like you're giving the full charge. It's the same way as they're doing the encrypting. They'll just take a small, encryption that just like you might have charged this and it's cost you $30 to charge it, but the ransomwares charge you $31. So essentially $1 is getting siphoned off the top each time. But if they're doing this across essentially thousands, then eventually hundreds of thousands of charging stations, and everyone who's going in there, and then the user who's actually in control of these charging stations isn't aware of what's actually happening. They're able to siphon off small fractional interests of money from the users. It's not going in, and this can grow and grow and grow and grow. And then other things, and obviously putting any types of code that can disrupt how the car can operate. They can update in terms of whether the charging station will actually work. That's the other thing is, you plug your car in there, you go away to, Target, come back as the Tesla charging stations at our Target, you see them all parked there, and you come back and your Tesla's not being charged.
And to add to that, Alistair, here's an interesting statistics, right? That I do want to kind of state 62% of hackers, right? They state that they can find and exploit within the perimeter, or they can expose the perimeter or the attack surface of an organization in less than 5 hours. Okay. So this is why it's important to consistently, once, again, when we're talking about data, we're talking about these infrastructures of putting on the network, it's important to have what we like to use the term data security monitoring at the attack surface. That's what these organizations is critical that they do this, because 62% of hackers, if they can attack your perimeter, right, the perimeter of your systems in less than 5 hours, that's right. That's so that's why you need data security monitoring. So.
Yeah, and then it also comes back to the technology these companies are sitting on. So you're on cutting edge technology. If you're able to hack into the EV charging stations company and they're developing some new technology, steal that technology, essentially your IP, future business, all the money you've spent in research and development. You could talk millions, if not billions of dollars for some of these companies, then, that is lost as well. So it's not only they're trying to protect, the end user and what's happening. So this creates just so many more problems going forward that people aren't really thinking about right now. And, we talk about cybersecurity a lot in the show. Obviously, you're an expert in cybersecurity, Daniel. But, people need to realize it's so important. And then what companies are doing is companies find it difficult to invest in cybersecurity because they see the cost in the same way you think, am I going to pay my McAfee software protection? It's just like, I got it for $20. It works great. I'm happy with it. Tells me on that. Oh, its renewal time is $160. My computer's only worth like $600 now. I'm not going to pay that. So I was happy to pay $20. I don't want to pay $160. And we were talking about how basic that, security system works. But, ultimately, if you don't pay for something, next thing you're going to get these Trojans coming in. You're going to get ransomware coming in. You end up getting all these problems that are happening with your computer, start slowing down. Now they've got access to it. Now they're pulling all your data and information. Most people keep a list of their passwords somewhere on their computer. It's encrypted on a list in an Excel spreadsheet named as something else. It's like, but that doesn't, it's not like, oh, well, I'm not going to look in that file because it's named, shopping, like Granny's shopping list. What I mean?
Right.
These things they're just running through information. Anything that looks like passwords, anything that look like they can take, they copy all that in there. And suddenly, next thing you know, wait a minute, some guys from Nigeria have been spending my money in Boston, and it's like, how does that happen? It's like, it's always someone from Nigeria and stuff like that as well. So it's like, or going out to other countries whereby, and that just shows you as well. It's always going to countries you think, oh, these countries aren't developed, but they're obviously developed pretty well because, ultimately they're able to bypass, your banking cybersecurity protocols. So let's not start going into places like, oh, well, these guys in Africa don't know what they're doing, or these people in Asia. I'll tell you what, when they can basically hack into Bank of America or hack into that, they can easily hack into your, computer sitting at home, and you've got your $20 software. And the next thing you know, they catch your passwords. They can do that as well. There's ultimately loads of things. I remember watching a documentary. I went back in the UK. and it was about a charity who was donating computers. So everyone's donating computers, like it was the old, the big old ones, the big squares and that. And then you would be sending them. So they were going out to this charity in Africa. So everyone's UK, stick them in there. As they were getting, and then you're talking thousands of computers. So they were all coming over in this ship, and then they were on these lorries, and they were just coming back, and they were just driving them in. And then these guys turned up, and I'm not going to say they were like, they call them like pirates and that out there, but essentially they're coming up in these 4x4s with like a machine gun on the back, This little kid gets out, and he had a little bit of software, and all they're doing is they're going through every single computer, unscrewing the thing, putting the hard disk in, seeing if there's any information. If there's any information at all, they're keeping those ones, and then the charities are getting the rest of them. And it was like, and this guy, it was just like a little kid, like 10, 11-year-old kid, and it just plugged something in, and it's just like checking information. Yep. You've got to wipe stuff. If people think when you're returning a phone, you're returning a computer, you're returning anything, you've got to completely wipe it. And people thought they were wiping these hard disks as well, but there's always information encoded further in than that. If you're giving away your computer, you should really take the hard disk and snap it and chuck it in the bin, because, ultimately that's the problem. And I was just watching this, and I just thought, that's unbelievable that they're doing that. It's just like so highly advanced technology to basically hacking into stuff. And now, because we're all cloud-based, they don't even need to do that anymore. They're just finding little wormholes, and they can go into things, pushing different ways to access your site, pushing different way to access your PC. Do not open emails when they're sent through from other people, etc. Because, next thing you know, it's just some Trojan software. Great. Especially these online casino stuff. That's the worst. Boom. I've got an extra 20 credits. If I press this one, I'll have some of that. Boom. Next thing you know, they've got all your data. You've agreed to terms and conditions. I was actually wanting to, because I'm getting stiffer as I get older, actually, Daniel. So wife wanted me to do a bit of yoga. And it was basically, so I went to download this yoga app, a bit off topic, opened it up, and it says, we'd like permission to access all these different things. So I'm thinking, what permission are they wanting to access? Well, the first one they want to access is the health and data one. Okay, well, that's fair enough. Then they want to access, how many steps I do a day. And then they want to access all this other stuff. We want to access your photos. We want to access this. It's like, well, wait a minute. Why is a yoga app wanted to access my photos? And if I agreed to it, and eventually had to just delete it, because it was just like, I just couldn't believe, why is a yoga app asking? Most times, and it's just because I spend time speaking to you guys that I start to check these things. Otherwise, I just agree. There you go. Have access to everything on my phone.
Yep.
And especially the casino ones. See, they're the worst. Have access to it. You're so desperate to gamble. They've given me $100 free credit.
Yeah.
I cannot wait to press it, and boom. You just agreed for that app to come in there. You agreed to the terms and conditions. It was in black and white. You were so excited to get your free $100 for your bet. Now, whoever's behind this, which is pretty much anonymous anyway, there's your $100. And by the way, every time you hit a spin, it's longer and longer for us to download this thing into your phone. Boom, taking all your data.
There you go. Yep.
It's like crazy how that actually happens. But that's basically it. So it's, and people need to understand that, so you're going with your car. Now, your Tesla's a computer. It's basically, it's a computer. Your life's in that Tesla. Let's be realistic. He's got it through his life. You're driving your life in a grid. You're connecting it to some charging station to get a charge for your battery. If they've got a little bit of Trojanware in that thing, boom, you're just basically giving all your data over the line, over out to the smart kids out in Korea. Boom, we've got all your information now. Next thing you know, wait a minute, I'm not in Paris spending money. He's buying baseball cards and NFT baseball cards in Paris for me. Like, what's happened? Next thing you know, it just drains your cash, And it's like, we're talking offline as well, but Silicon Valley Bank and stuff like that, and people losing their money. And that's, you start talking about what people do in a personal level and, what you agree to in terms and conditions. And I just think that aspect of it is just so big that it's just incredible. And I
It
know you're
is.
working on an exciting project on it, but I'm just going to bring up another project. We'll speak about your project again in a minute, though, Daniel. But let's just bring in this other article, which is pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
This new crypto platform is changing the game for electric vehicle industry. Less than 40 hours left before stage 6. So essentially, they're doing a capital raise right now. So
Yep.
it's C Plus Charge believes electrical transportation is the most environmentally friendly option. As a result, it aims to provide better electric vehicle charging experience in order to promote and facilitate the transition to sustainable electric mobility, you know? But there's limited infrastructure to electric charging stations, and this is stopping the widespread adoption. So therefore, using blockchain technology, the platform aims to become the industry standard, which is a bit of a claim because,
Yeah,
but
it is.
either way, it wants to become the industry standard for electric vehicle charging payments by creating a robust peer-to-peer payment mechanism for EV charging stations. You know, they've raised nearly $3 million already with their native token. There's 40 hours left to invest into this token. But what's interesting about this article is it's actually creating a level of encryption. So the piece of the vulnerabilities we were speaking about earlier, and I'm going to reach out to this company and see if we get the CEO to come in and explain, but you know, you're speaking about Chainlink, you're speaking about blockchain. If you're making the payments into these EV charging centers on the blockchain and it's encrypted, suddenly when you plug your Tesla or your electric vehicle into this thing, because it's encrypted that piece of payment and the way it's encrypted there, they're no longer be able to come in and access all your details, even if they've got Trojan malware in the system, because essentially that payment portal is now encrypted because essentially you're paying for it through some form of blockchain cryptocurrency through their platform rather than just your credit card getting plugged straight into the system. What's your take on the whole thing, Daniel?
Yeah, so obviously what they're doing is using what we call the zero trust framework. So their system that is a protocol, right? Based on the blockchain protocol, which is the zero knowledge proof, and extending that protocol in accordance to the zero trust framework. And particularly, as we all know what zero trust means, right? You trust no one, right? So that's pretty much, again, which is good, actually, in as it relates to a layer, an added layer of security, but taking that zero trust and expanding on it framework, right? And then we could take it to the next level in the blockchain. It's where data security monitoring can be really effective.
So let's talk about Chainlink and let's talk about your project and talk about where the issues are and what you're trying to solve in that.
Exactly. Well, on the blockchain, obviously, and we're still dealing with is the bridging network problem, right, on the blockchain. And so when it comes to cryptos, again, on the exchanges, right, to centralize, and when I want to trade, crypto across another platform, a cryptocurrency platform, at that level, there is what we like to use the term e-governance. There's no security there, right? So utilizing API security, or API, we use the term API security as a service, which is a chain link or secure bridging network to
Oracle is the leader in this, is it?
I'm sorry. Say yes. Oracle is the leader in this. Absolutely.
So before you go on there, I know you're getting quite technical, but I want to go down the technical route with you. But just explain to viewers out there how Oracle Chainlink actually works.
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, the Oracle chain links are basically, they're just validators, right? They're basically is a middleware to any business, helping a business interested in adopting the technology, blockchain technology. So helping bring in off-chain data we use the term off-chain, meaning typical traditional data transactions, putting that on the blockchain, right? As it relates to in Chainlink, or the Oracle is that middleware that does it, takes the off-chain data, bring it on chain for better, in staking, providing price feeds, as well as what we do is data security monitoring. So that's sort of basically what an oracle is, actually.
So coming back to your project then, Daniel. So, you were talking about how the chain links works with crypto exchanges. Now you've got people like crypto.com, you've got Kraken Bank, there's a lot of blocks in between and a lot of security protocols in between for you to basically trade crypto comfortably without getting hacked, and you'll be able to get your money on there, you'll be able to buy the crypto and get your money out. But now we're talking about EV charging stations. Essentially, it's a similar mechanism, but there's essentially none of that cybersecurity protocols or limited cybersecurity protocols.
Limited, yeah, limited. And zero trust, or the protocol in the blockchain, zero knowledge proof, or that zero trust framework, is a framework that's being expanded upon to improve, right? Even with EVs, that security level, right? That layer, it's an additional layer, or adding that layer.
Yeah, so let's talk about your project and what you're working on, Daniel, and why you're trying to solve this. So what you're doing that's going to help towards this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, we e-governance or auditing risk or dynamic risk management at that level, the API security level. So that's basically what our Oracle is, because it's that middleware. Our primary focus is, we like to use the term API security as a service. So we're focusing on that, what you call the surface or edge level or perimeter level type security, in comparison to application type layer security, if that makes sense. Our primary focus is the auditing and the risk and the management and validation, ensuring the integrity when you're utilizing an API, right? External or internal APIs for transacting across different platforms, and particularly in the case of in our case, peer-to-peer or the blockchain, the network or crypto side, trading between different cryptocurrencies or different platforms, you need this API, right? And so the focus area of auditing or bringing e-governance and compliance at that level, that's our primary objective as a business. That's what we focus on in that area.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I just think, and going forward, it'll just be a topic we'll just end talking more and more about, as the world gets electrified. It's essentially, we're moving to this world whereby everything's going to be run by electricity. Everything's going to have backup battery. We're going to have different types of AI speaking to those types of things. Everything's becoming interconnected. But as everything goes on to that, in terms of all traditional modes of transportation, all traditional everything, all traditional financial structures, everything's going onto the blockchain. And then as things go onto the blockchain, just it creates more and more cybersecurity issues.
Absolutely. And another thing, just, identifying fraud at a scale. Basically, that's, utilizing what we do when you're speaking of AI, particularly identifying, you can use AI to be identifying fraud at scale, right? Utilizing graph technology. So AI and cybersecurity, it has its huge potential. And so this is one of our focus areas as a business as well.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Well, thanks very much for that today then, Daniel. Really enjoyed the chat.
Yep.
We'll talk to the viewers a little bit more about electric vehicle charging stations and some of the problems we might have ahead of ourselves. But I'm sure with people like you out there, Daniel, we'll be able to solve them all.
I try, right? I need a team of individuals, not just myself, but there's others. We all in this space.
Brilliant. Yep. Well, thanks very much again for coming on the show, Daniel. We enjoyed it again.
Thank you.
No problem at all.
Thank you, Alistair. Appreciate it. Everyone. Glad to be here.
Okay, thanks to everyone out there who joined the show. My name's Alistair Caithness. You've been watching Boom It's on the Blockchain. Have a nice day.